about the subsidy removal, and we just spoke with Elijah, I forgot his first name. Yahaya, about his party that was recently dissolved. And he spoke to us about some things that they have in progress now. But we want to go back to talking about the subsidy removal. So,
yeah, because now look at the environment, in Nigerian environment today. We are still talking about subsidy. They just the Senate just passed 161 billion.
Yeah, 161 billion naira.
Additional subsidy supplemental budget, because the money that we initially budgeted, about 889 billion naira, we exhausted that, so now we have to budget another 161 to pay the people who are importing fuel into the country.
The question is, who are we subsidizing against?
Well, that's a complex thing. Yeah, the big question is, they estimated that it's going to cost 800 and something billion, and by December they ran out of money. So in 3 weeks, for the rest of the year, 3 weeks remaining, they needed 161 billion
naira.
And if you remember, at the beginning of the subsidy debate, the finance minister, Mrs. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, said that if the government should revert to the old price, she will resign. Government went back to 97 instead of 141 naira for a liter, and she stayed there. Now, she was supposed to be the one that will manage the economy and make sure that we don't exhaust the money budgeted, the 800 and something billion. But we finished that, and there was not enough left. Now, the new budget just approved. I've not read where they said something about how much we budgeted for subsidy. I don't know if you're aware of that. And that raises the question, are we going to get a surprise on January 1?
Like last year.
Like last year?
Like this year.
This year, yeah. And if that should happen, what would that do to Nigerians?
I think one other thing to keep in mind is, what's the difference between how much the government used to spend when they were subsidizing fuel for everybody? Because now it looks to be like we're still spending, the government is still spending as much as they were spending before they removed subsidy. But the only difference is the common people are no longer enjoying that subsidy. It's now the rich importers that are enjoying it. But do you want to talk a little bit about why we have to import oil?
Oh, well, we're importing because there was an interview recently where Buhari said that when he was in power, when he was the head of state, that we were exporting oil, petrol products, because our refineries in Kaduna and Port Harcourt were working, and we were making enough for Nigeria, and we have excess to export. But now we are not making, we are operating at less than 30% of capacity.
But the government claimed 40% capacity.
But the key thing is that we are not making enough to supply into our markets, so we have to import. And
to countries like Ghana.
We're even importing from Niger now. Niger, yeah.
We spend money to export it there. We pay them to refine it.
Exactly.
And then we pay...
Venezuela, too, is also refining for Nigeria. So, which is really a disgrace that after our Obasanjo's administration for 8 years spent billions of dollars trying to refurbish and fix the refineries, they couldn't work. And now
it's billion.
Yeah, billions. I'm talking about dollars. And now they are talking about selling it off. Sometimes they will sell it and then they will recant and say, no, we are not selling it because it was so cheap. So the oil industry is just in a mess. And the recent Ribadu report came out and said that there were a lot of corruption, billions of dollars being stolen or lost in the process. And you're asking the country, the poor people in the country, to pay more for transportation, pay more for food, because you could not control the corruption going on in the industry. I think that's the core of the debates.
It's very interesting that you brought up the fact that millions of gallons are disappearing, even at the NNPC. I mean, that's where it's supposed to be like security when it comes to oil production. This is NNPC, for God's sake. If millions of gallons can disappear at NNPC, you can just think about how much gallons can disappear between the exporting and importing. And also there's a lot of vandalism that goes on with these pipelines, and the rate of vandalism actually keeps going up. So I think these are so many things that the government is, I would say, in my opinion, deliberately ignoring. that the things they're supposed to fix, like taking care of the vandalism and also the oil that the report that Ribadu came up with. As you've noticed, nothing has been done about this report. It came out now, it's been some months.
Yeah.
So
Nigeria actually produces officially 2.4 million barrels every day. 2.4 million. And that's official figure. And we know there are a lot of barrels unaccounted for. Even from the multinational companies, they just tell Nigerians, this is how much we're producing, and nobody checks to make sure that that's how much they're producing.
The finance minister, it's so hard to imagine how they were able to justify the subsidy removal at the beginning of the year. But just looking back at the budget, the finance minister, just look at her ministry, how much they budgeted for her, taking care of pests. Like millions of naira just for them to take care of the pest in her compound. So, I mean, that should tell Nigerians something about...
No, the cost of government is one of the biggest problems in Nigeria. The cost of running that government, the whole idea of that edifice called the government. That recently the central bank governor said that they need to get rid of 50% or 70% of... Initially, I think he said Nigerian workforce. Then now he turned it to be political appointees. But there's no doubt that the cost of running the Senate and the House and the presidency is too much, you know, and they acknowledge that when they do the budget, because most of the money goes into paying people, paying off salaries of public officials. And then the cost of running some corporations that are not really making any profit for the government, which is one area where they are now deciding that privatizing things may be the solution to solve some of the these problems of spending money on wasteful spending on the part of the government.
Rudolph, if you remember at the beginning of the year when they removed subsidy, they promised us some things.
Oh yeah, the buses. I was about to get to that because I don't think people have seen them on the roads.
I haven't.
And nobody's complaining, which is the issue about our people and consistency.
They said within 6 months, I think.
Yeah, that it will be everywhere, but of course, if you tell them, they will say, okay, you didn't allow us to remove all the subsidy, and I don't know if in the accounting, you know, whether we are accounting for the money they are now making from that subsidy that was removed. And of course, the main debate about subsidy is simple. If Naira loses its value,
it has.
There will be new subsidy, even if you remove all the subsidies today. If the value of Naira drops a little bit today, there's a new subsidy because the cost of importing that fuel to you has already gone up because you are now going to pay more.
So I guess one of the main solutions would have been to do whatever we have to do for the value of Naira to increase?
Well, yeah, that if we have something we can do, or to refine the oil in Nigeria.
But there has to be some things that we can do, and this is where the specialty of the finance minister should have come into place, and also the CBN governor, because Naira used to be the same value as dollar.
Oh, that was in the past. Now Naira is out there in the open market, so we don't produce a lot. So if you don't produce much, the value of your currency is not likely going to be high.
And that actually comes with a lot of trouble. That's why we have this problem of Yahoo boys. It's because they know that $100 here would be a lot of money when it comes to Nigeria. I mean, I know we're talking about oil subsidy removal, but everything ties into each other. If the value of Naira is the same as dollar here, they know that $100 will be 100 Naira back home. They won't be spending hours on the internet trying to scam people, you know.
Yeah, and if you remember, during the time of that debate about the oil subsidy, we all saw the chart about how much the price of fuel is in other countries in the world.
Oh, yeah.
And in Nigeria, it was outrageous, you know, considering the fact that only about 70% of people in Nigeria live on less than $2 a day. So we don't actually have money to pay for fuel at the rate that we are expected to pay for them. And the government argues that ordinary people don't buy fuel. That is actually the rich and the elites who are buying fuel, that we can't be subsidizing the lifestyle of the elites. That was the argument they made. But they noticed too, which was a surprise to them, that if you increase the price of fuel, poor people will pay. Yeah, because the price of everything, that was a surprise to the minister.
It
happened. Yeah, it happened. Now, but the question now is, if you look at the situation today in Nigeria, the price of fuel is now higher than what
Yeah.
the subsidy they wanted to remove. And people are okay with that. People are living their lives.
I think we are just in Nigeria.
People are, they, but what it means is
Instead of
that,
fighting.
yeah, but what it means is that the people in power, they know,
That
they are
people
watching the
will
Nigerians. They know
adjust.
that people, they will adjust. The assumption is, if you know, they probably sit down at home and say, oh, they will make noise for 1 day, 2 days, and they will calm down and they will pay the price. It wouldn't be a problem if the government is not, there's no corruption. The amount of corruption going on in Nigeria, which we see in figures after figures, in committee reports after reports, it's frightening. So if these things are not happening, if the money of the country is being judiciously used, I don't think people will complain that they have to pay more or they have to make some sacrifices. But it appears as if the people in power are expecting the ordinary people to make the sacrifices while they will continue to live the lifestyles that they've been living.
And I think it all comes back to the basic amenities. If they had provided the basic amenities for the people, at least there'll be some kind of justification. I'm not saying that it's the right thing that they removed the oil subsidy, but the roads are still bad. In fact, they're now worse than they used to be. Some say that electricity is becoming stable, but people still queue up for gas to power their generators, which they call "I better pass my neighbor." And the schools are still, I mean, nothing has changed really even in the past 1 year. Like, looking at this administration this year, like, what is the one thing that this administration has done differently? I don't see anything that has really changed.
Yeah, and I remember when we interviewed Tunde Bakare, and I asked him about the Occupy Nigeria movement, what lessons were learned, and what are they waiting for in terms of taking other steps. He said something that actually concerned me. He said something that, like, that they didn't want to risk the lives of people. That was one reason why they stopped, and that's one reason why they are not going to keep taking actions. For instance, say, I asked him specifically, why don't you occupy the National Assembly until they reduce the salaries they are paying the lawmakers, which is outrageous, which is higher than anywhere in the world. He said that he wouldn't like to risk the lives of people. But the question is, if the politicians know, if Mubarak, if the Egyptians had said, well, we're not going to risk the lives of people, Mubarak would still have been in power, So there's a concern about, because people are dying.
I was about to
this
say
Christmas,
that.
I'm sure that more people will have died on the road this coming weekends than the number of people that died during the Occupy Nigeria movement. I mean,
not risking people's lives. Indirectly, we're still risking our lives every day
by
coping with the situation of things, by still traveling on those roads that are
by
bad.
Flying the
by
sick
flying
ones to India to go for operation, by
going for medical treatment, by even flying those aircrafts in Nigeria, because we all know that Nigerian aviation industry is not safe. So, I mean, we're still risking our lives. But I can also reason with what he said. I mean, upon the fact that 16 people were killed during the protests, they were able to buy off the labor movement. So, I mean, today, the families of those that lost their children, is like, over what? Nothing still changed.
It's always a constant question when you think about Nigeria. People always ask, is it worth dying for? Is Nigeria worth dying for? And we don't know. We are going to eventually hear from you, our viewers. We'll take calls and we'll hear what you think about some of these things, issues we are raising. Where do you think Nigeria is, and what is your outlook for the country in the coming year?
I think that one thing that people should keep in mind, though, is the fact that, especially people that just adjust, well, there's nothing that can be done. We should always keep in mind that despite the fact that they removed subsidy and it became hard for common people to buy anything, price of everything went up, we should keep in mind that all these politicians, their budget was not affected at all. The president is still eating with more than 1 billion naira. The finance minister, like I said, the budget just to pest control and all that. The CBN governor, he's getting his share. All these people are still getting their share. They didn't cut down their own allowances. It's the common people that are paying for it. So that's just something for Nigerians to keep in mind, especially those that say there's nothing else that can be done, we just have to live with it. You just need to remember that these people that have the power to make changes, their lifestyle is not affected at all. It's your lifestyle that is being affected.
Yeah, and there is this idea that it's been gaining grounds in Nigeria that is troubling. It seems as if this idea that American Republican Party have that what they call trickle down economics. That is that we get the rich comfortable and something we drip to the poor people. Trickle down, yeah, trickle down. That's the word. To the poor people, you know. So you have people saying that the country is doing well, the elite are doing well. There are a lot of people who are making a killing in the oil industry, contractors.
And, you know, their
Yeah,
cases
so
never
these
settled.
people, when you look at them, it appears as if people tell me, what is the you're not seeing the positive things going on in Nigeria. So what are the positive things? They talk about this Atlantic city. There's a new city they're building in Lagos. Somewhere at the beach, Lekki Beach area, and that's a wonderful thing, you know. So, but the question is, for the average Nigerian, what has changed in the last 1 year?
When you just talking about the positive changes, people saying that, oh, you don't see positive changes. You know the way I look at it, when you've lived elsewhere, when you've tasted life in another place, and you realize that I'm actually being cheated, you see it differently than somebody that has been robbed, but they didn't know that they've been robbed. And then when they are suffering, someone gives them like a little bit, and they're so grateful, like, oh my goodness, these are positive things coming out. But you that you know what they've been robbed of, you realize, no, that's not a positive change. That's your right, and you're not even getting half of your right. So I think that's where the difference comes between people that say that, oh, you don't see any positive change. People like that, when they get to leave Nigeria to live elsewhere for like a year, and they see how the system runs, the simple things, the good roads, the emergency management people, how the police people work in other places, electricity is stable for a year and all that, they go back to Nigeria and they start complaining. Those same people.
And what I have noticed too, even from politicians who are in power, is when they come out of that position, then they start complaining. While they are in a position where they're benefiting from the system, everything is good. They see the good things going on. They don't see the people who are not benefiting. So there are a lot of people who are in positions today where they are part of the establishment and they're benefiting from that. And to them, things are good. Everything is normal. They're enjoying life. But the question is the majority, what they call the common good, the common people. How are they faring? That is the question. It's not about you, who is a politician, who you have drivers, you have official cars.
They're supposed to serve the people.
Yeah, exactly.
They're elected in hope of serving the people, but we obviously don't know what it means to serve the people. And the sad part of it is that all these politicians, so many of them, they've been outside Nigeria. They see how life is outside, and they go back and they don't do what they've seen elsewhere. Come on, train here. So many of them have been in like express trains, and we don't have anything like that in Nigeria. Instead, we have this beat up, train,
second-hand trains,
maybe third hand.
Yeah, that they are bringing in. But that brings us to another issue, which is what the Minister of Information, Maku, always talks about, which is that people are running the country down. People are talking down on the country. We are not promoting the good aspect of the country. You wish, yeah, exactly. You wish that there will be good news coming from the country every day, and you will highlight it. But this morning, I wanted to come here and say, did anybody notice that in the last 1 month there was no bombing by Boko Haram?
I was thinking the same thing,
but then,
thank God we're over Boko Haram this year.
And this morning it happened. So how do you...
Just days to Christmas.
And remember, last Christmas there was a big one that killed a lot of people in Niger State. So you can see that basically, if you look at the news at the end of this year and the news at the beginning, not a lot have changed. I can't tell you about
How
a
do
lot
you
of things that
ignore
changed.
that?
So how do you say, oh, okay, we have to find good things? The president,
construction.
the president bought a new jet. Some ministers, some pastors bought new jets.
It's a good thing that they are doing the train. It's like finally, like seriously, we've supposed to have this train running like years and years ago, and also considering the amount that they said they spent, and if you take a look at the train that we are getting, you know that this doesn't match with the money that they said they are spending, and yet people don't see that they are being cheated in that. We're just happy to have the train. I'm glad we have the train, but if you take a critical look at the price they claim to spend on the train and the train that they are giving to the people, you would know that there's some cheating going on.
Not just that, but this is also what I think is changing in Nigeria. People are beginning to increase, they kind of raise the expectations. So it's not enough to now say you are doing, oh, power, now electricity, you have the power for 2 hours a day, and people are clapping. Yeah. People are saying that we are not going to clap until we get 24-hour supply of power
24 hours.
for 2 years, non-stop. Then we can say, oh, somebody did something different. Yeah. So, but that's the thing. It's about expectations. And when you raise expectations, politicians will have to work harder.
Perform. I guess that's the thing. We need a different mentality. Yeah. We need to expect the best. We can have the best in Nigeria. Electricity here is constant 24/7, 365 days a year. Why can't we have that? We need to expect the best, and we need to know that we are entitled to it.
Don't even compare anything with America. Say Ghana. Your next door neighbor.
Even Ghana.
How are they doing?
Dubai,
If Nigeria is not doing better than Ghana, if Nigeria is importing fuel from Niger, it's a disgrace. And Nigerians should be expecting more. Yeah. When your governor goes around and paints, plant flowers around at a roundabout at the main city of the town, of the city of the capital, and people say that he's performing, it's actually, you are the people who are making them, you are enabling them to believe. Because they entice you and satisfy you with something very little. Yeah, of course. It's your right to hold them accountable.
It's your right. You pay your taxes.
They are spending your money.
It's your right.
One more thing before we go on a break, because we have other segments that we are going to cover. But remember, during this subsidy debates, there was a lot of talk about the money they call security votes that the governors and all these public officials are taking. And there was a serious debate about cutting the money or eliminating that. It hasn't happened. They continue to take billions, and nothing has changed, which tells you a lot about our country and our people.
And nobody takes them.
It's about consistency. If you want to change, you have to keep talking about it, keep hammering on it until it happens. Do everything within your power to demand that change, because this is your money, this is your resources. All right. So
we'll take a break.
When we come back, we'll talk about other aspects of the year. And stay tuned.
Everybody, this your boy